everyone, and welcome back to Right Now, an author's platform. I am Dr. Pamela Hinkle, and I'm so excited to have you back here for another amazing episode. As always, these authors are bringing it. And we have the Ignited to Serve, Women of Power Ignited to Serve authors with us now. And this week, goodness, one of the power women, power we have in-house with us today is Miss Charisse. Woohoo! Welcome. So glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I'm super excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear your story and learn some more about you. Miss Charisse is someone that I've recently, because of this anthology, have had the pleasure of getting to know, and she's amazing. So if you don't have it, get that paper and that pen out, because I know she's going to be dropping some gold nuggets your way, and you're going to want to catch them all. So with no further ado, Charisse, tell everybody, who are you?
Well, so like Dr. Pamela said, I'm Charisse Burton, and I actually, above all things, above everything else, love the Lord with everything in me, and am a wife and a mom. I've been married to Andy it'll be 32 years in August, which I am blessed beyond measure. I can't be grateful enough. And we have 4 amazing sons, grown sons, that have actually helped me be who I am today. Our oldest one is 28, Zachary, and our second one, Zane, is 25. Our third one, Zeth, is 22, and our fourth one, Zion, is 19. So, yes, we did purposefully have 4, and we did purposefully name them all the way they're named, starting with the Z. So,
Love it.
I can tell you more about that later, but so I've been a business coach, a strategy and communication coach. I've been an entrepreneur for 18 plus years. And, I started kind of the story for me starts way back then. And, actually it starts way before that, but I had a very colorful childhood. That's the best way to describe it, a very colorful childhood. I changed schools 14 times before I graduated. And there's a lot of growing that happens when you change schools that often. And because of the colorful childhood and things that occurred, I went through a period of significant depression. And all of that happened right before I became an entrepreneur. And the way this kind of ties in is with that depression, and kind of what my chapter talks about is growing up feeling like you are unworthy and that you have nothing to give and there's really no purpose for you. And so over years, all that is just building inside. It's still there and it has to be dealt with at some point. And so it started coming out, and I started having to deal with all of that and figure out what was God doing and where was God. And I share a couple of stories in my chapter in this book, this amazing book. And by the way, the experience was phenomenal. But the chapter really is how I started to see God using me, and all of the things that I went through and the importance and the value and what I could take out of it. And one thing I didn't mention in that chapter, was how when you go through so much turmoil and abuse and things as a child, you tend to have a lot of anger, lot of anger. And I was really angry at God for a long time and wondered, where was he when all of this was happening? Where was he? Why didn't he protect me? We always have those conversations in our head, sometimes out loud. And a couple of things happened. I had our second son, and our personalities are very similar. And so he is the one that's in the Navy right now. He's very adventurous. He's very outgoing. He's very charismatic. And he's always been that way, even as a child. And as a child, for me, I could not be that way. I needed, for safety reasons, to hide. And I will never forget the Lord showing me. And it was such a gift to see. Oh, I'm not going to get emotional. That Zane, his personality is from me and what I was supposed to be like had it been safe for me. And it was, for me, such a gift to know that's what God had planted in me, and that also it is safe for my son to be who he is. And that was just amazing, absolutely tremendous for me to see that. And of course, we have 3 other sons, and everybody, they're all so different. Our second one, Zane, and our fourth one, Zion, are very similar. And our first one, Zachary, and our third one, Zeth, are very similar. But through all of the prayer and looking at how they have a safe home and feeling the gift and the blessing that God provided for me in that was just something I never imagined. I dreamed of it and wanted that as a little girl, but you just kind of think it's out of your reach whenever you're not living in it. And it is, you kind of go to a place of perfection to get so far away from the turmoil. There was no middle ground. So that's when actually the depression started coming up, is I was trying so hard to be perfect. I'm telling you, June Cleaver, if anybody knows who that is,
Yes.
June Cleaver was my model. That's who I thought I had to be. So for 10 years, I would get up every single morning, have full makeup, hair done, everything before my husband. I was a little crazy about all that. My husband would eat cream of mushroom soup out of a can, and has. I mean, that's how he just doesn't expect or demand ever. But it was all me thinking I had to reach this certain level of perfection so that it would be surely be different than my growing up. I would judge how I was doing. I look at this now and think, oh my word. But I would judge how I was doing on my scale by when Andy would come home from work. If the kids were clean, the house was clean, dinner was on the table, and steam was coming off of it. There had to be steam coming off the food. And all the dishes that I used to cook with were already clean. If all of that happened, then I was doing a good job. I mean, that kind of pressure.
Yeah, no kidding.
So needless to say, I could not carry that on for a long time. And I did hit a wall. And I had to really face who God was to me. Was he that one that was making me feel like I had to have that kind of perfectionism? Or was he just waiting for me to say, baby, I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do. Just come to me. That's all I want. And I had to decide that. And I had to come to terms with my childhood and where he was in that. And the second point that I actually didn't talk about in the book either was I always would ask, where was he? Why did he let this happen? And because there is evil in the world, things like that are going to happen. It's just because there's evil in the world. That's all there is to it. And God showed me, would you have chosen this for another little girl to go through? And I absolutely said no instantly. And he showed me that it's because of the strength I knew you would have that you were the one I chose to go through this. And to me, again, that was a huge blessing, a huge gift that he showed me that it was going to happen because there's evil in the world. But I knew who you are. I knew who you would become. And he wasn't throwing me to the wolves. He was protecting other people because he knew I would be strong enough to walk through it.
Wow.
So that's where I came to figuring out I do have something. I do have something to offer, and showing women that God created them perfectly and beautifully and with strength, right the way they are, without having to become something, without having to change who they are, without having to be perfect. We're loved no matter what, regardless. And having that message was so important for me. So I started a business 18 years ago, or 18 plus years ago. And that was the foundation of that. It was actually in a direct sales business, but that was the foundation for it so that I could reach other women. And I ended up kind of transitioning into the business coaching that I'm doing now, but it's all stems from the gifts that God has given us. Everybody's got those gifts. Everybody has their own set of gifts. And so many times when we're trying to be perfect, we're overlooking those gifts. And when we are not acknowledging who we are in Christ, we are overlooking those gifts. And it's like those are the two extremes.
Mm-hmm.
But when we walk with him and allow him to work through us, it's like I was talking to a friend of mine, Jody Solberg, who is actually, she is the one who introduced me to you and Apostle Deborah. So that's how I got involved in the book. But we were talking about how when you allow people to see the cracks that have been repaired, that is when they resonate with you. And that's when you can show them how they were repaired. That's when you can show them Jesus.
That is so powerful. You know, the cracks don't make us imperfect.
Exactly.
They show the story, right?
Exactly. They absolutely do. They show the story, and they show the strength that God uses to build us back together and build us even stronger. The cracks are what makes us beautiful.
Yes. Make us unique.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so often we look at those cracks and look at them and think they're failures, or we look at them as faults, or we think we can't allow anyone to see those. And that was something that I really struggled with and I have to be honest, I struggle with that from time to time, is letting people in to see those.
Sure.
Because, we don't want to be judged,
Right.
but those cracks are just, they are the one, that's what makes us unique. That's what makes us the individual creation God created us to be.
And it shows his hand and his mercy and his power,
Mm-hmm.
his redemption, that he doesn't leave us a mess.
Absolutely.
Right? That is so powerful. Charisse, you said overlooking your gifts, and you talked about two extremes. That was really powerful. Could you just maybe, pull the veil back, unpack that a little bit more for us? I feel like there's people there that need to hear this because they may be overlooking their gifts and not even realize it.
Absolutely. I think so many people will overlook their gifts when they don't acknowledge or see any strength in themselves. And so we fall into that category, or that it's really a trap of, I don't have anything to offer. And I've been there. I don't have anything to offer. I'm not good enough. What I do is not worthy of serving anyone else. And I think we fall into that place when we are absolutely not, almost refusing to see what God has placed in us. That's one extreme, I think. The other extreme, and I've been in both places, I like to do it all. I'm an overachiever too. With the perfectionism, going to that extreme, you are trying to do everything in your own power, and you're not allowing the gifts God put in you to be used because you're doing everything, you're trying to do everything only in you. And again, I believe you're not seeing God and what he's trying to use you for.
Yes.
So it really can be in both places when you are really in a down place and you're absolutely refusing that God has put anything in you, or when you are trying to do everything in your own power, you're still refusing to see that God put anything in you because you're not working in his power or letting him do anything.
That is so deep and yet so simple, isn't it? You had mentioned that, where was it? Okay, talking more about what you just said about that perfection, that when you were trying to be perfect, that came out of all the turmoil. You put all this responsibility on yourself that you were going to be perfect. Was that a protective mechanism, do you think? Like, this is not going to happen to me ever again. I'm not going to be out of control. This is not going to be passed forward in my family. Nobody's ever going to realize like the pain behind the makeup. You know what I mean? Like
all of those things. Yes.
Okay.
It really was. It absolutely was. And I remember saying to myself, whenever Andy and I got married, I am never going to do certain things because I saw that in my life. I'm never going to be in my pajamas for 3 days in a row. I'm never going to not clean the house. I'm never going to do those things. So instead of just riding with the flow, I went to the opposite extreme because I was never going to fall back to that place again. I was never going to allow my kids to be even remotely close to what I had growing up. I was going to be absolutely 100% opposite. And that meant everything in my life would be perfect.
Right.
So it was really interesting because that perfectionism, pushing so hard to be perfect. And again, my husband, he's put up with so much. He never was that person. He said, have you done my laundry? He's never been that way. Right. He's the one who does laundry and makes the beds. And it's never been about him expecting anything from me. It was all me. And choosing to go that far and to perfectionism, it was a mask for all of those reasons. It was a mask so that nobody could see that we maybe weren't perfect. Yeah. Because to me, if we weren't perfect, then we were like my family. There was no in between. There was no gray area. It was you're either perfect and living a June Cleaver life, or you're in an abusive situation and being put in a children's home. There was no middle ground. Wow. And so it was trying, to say the least. It was
the word. I think of the word or the free a pressure cooker.
Yes,
like that's exactly what a pressure cooker. And do you think that there was fear in there? Were you so afraid it was going to repeat that you were in this pressure cooker?
Oh, absolutely. That was such a massive fear that it almost kept my husband and I from getting married because I was so afraid of perpetuating the problem, or perpetuating the cycle rather. And I was so afraid of being like my mom. She was the one that had the problems. She was the one that was really, I think, had a lot of mental issues that were undiagnosed and therefore not helped. And so I was terrified of being like my mom. And that fear caused me really to push more towards the perfectionism. Then when we started having kids, I would just pray, please don't let me have a girl. Please don't let me have a girl. Because then I was afraid that cycle would continue.
Wow.
And I didn't. I had 4 boys.
I was going to say, and you did. You got 4 boys.
Yeah. It's funny though. After the second one, I was like, I think I could handle a girl. I was like, nope. You already prayed it. It's already too late. But,
Wow. So at what point did did you have an aha moment, an epiphany moment? It was like, I'm not living this way anymore, or did everything just start to unravel for you? And what happened? Because obviously the June Cleaver type of imagery that you were trying to produce, but also feeling on the inside, I can imagine. I am nowhere near June Cleaver, but I'm going to pretend that I am. That must have been just like a constant thing nagging in the back of your head and your heart. So when did it finally erupt and you knew things had to change?
Let's see. It was starting to erupt on a consistent basis through, to be completely transparent, bursts of rage. Okay. It was that pressure cooker was releasing. It had to go somewhere. So I would have bursts of rage, and I knew that was going to cause a problem. And I also knew I needed to get into counseling, but at the same time, I was afraid that wouldn't work. And I want people to hear this too. I also felt like if I had enough faith that I wouldn't have to go to counseling. If I had enough faith, I wouldn't need to be on any kind of medication. So for years, I wouldn't. I told my doctor I will not take medication because if I have enough faith. And finally, a doctor said to me, because to answer your question, it all began to unravel. Everything began to unravel. I want to say, I guess it was 2002, right around there. It really started to unravel. We had 4 kids, and I always wanted to be a mom, but I had to be the perfect mom. And if it wasn't perfect, then it was going to be bad. So we had 4 boys. Andy was working so much because we were trying to get out of debt, and everything just hit the fan. And I could not see any purpose that was from me that was going to be good for my children. The enemy is so brilliantly destructive that I was convinced that everything I could possibly do would harm my kids. To the point, this is what's scary, to the point I would try to get myself out of it. I would try to read the Bible. I would try to listen to worship music, and I would see or hear twisted phrases that would encourage me that it would be better for me if I was in heaven. So it was just bizarre. And I really started thinking, maybe that's right. Maybe I do need to leave this world. And I could not figure out how to make that happen without my kids seeing me because I was a stay-at-home mom.
Sure.
And that's when Andy said, that's it. We're going to someone. And the doctor that we went to, he had worked with me. He was actually the one who delivered Zion, said, and I told him, I'm not going to get on medication. And he said, Charisse, that is bad theology. It's bad theology. It doesn't matter how much faith you have. Medication is medication, and you need medication. And he also explained to me a little bit more about serotonin levels and how those were used up when I was a child, and all that made more sense to me.
Sure.
So I got on medication, and the first 6 weeks, it was horrible. It was hard. It made me feel worse. But he said that was to be expected. And we continued, and probably about 3 months later, we saw him at church. And to give you any kind of idea of the difference, the doctor was walking out of church, and my husband, we were still during the service, and my husband jumped up and ran and hugged him.
Oh my gosh.
So I knew that was a gift, and we were blessed, and medication is a good thing. It was a good thing.
Sister, preach it. Oh my gosh. You know what? God created everything on the earth to make medicine, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, that is so true. So many people can get
Absolutely.
stuck on that and think that they don't have enough faith, whereas they could put their faith in the medicine.
Exactly. It's the same. I mean, we've heard this before, but it is the same thing with, if you're diabetic, take your insulin. I mean, it's the same scenario. And so I just want, if anybody hears that, it is bad theology. Have faith in the medicine. God is providing that as the tool. That's the oar for the boat to get you down the river.
That's good. It's the oar for the boat. I'm writing that down. That's so good. Well, and in our house, Charisse, we always say, thank you, God, for working through, above, and beyond the medicine, the medication.
Yes.
Through, above, and beyond it. No matter what it is that we're taking, God can work through it, above it, and beyond it, right? So
yes,
that is so powerful. Now, you had said that the kind of where everything started collapsing was bursts of anger. And at the very beginning, you said when you go through trauma, anger is that, that side dish that comes with it. There's a lot of unresolved anger. When things were blowing up and you were contemplating whether or not you should even be here, all these bursts of anger, which are probably making you feel guilty and probably making you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going on the same path. I'm out of control. I'm not good enough. I'm not. June Cleaver isn't angry. June Cleaver doesn't need medication, right?
Exactly.
All these things that you're probably, beating yourself up about. I always say the enemy beats you up with the same carrot he leads you with. So he leads you with that, and then, beats you up, and it's like, here, you take it. Now you beat yourself up, and when you're done, hand it back to me, and I'll keep hitting you.
Such a good picture. It's so true.
It's a team, isn't it? And we're beating ourselves up, and he's beating us up. And then your husband steps in. Thank God for him. And he is really seeing the side of you that God sees. He sees beyond all of this pomp and circumstance that you're trying to put out there. And he sees you. He sees the God in you and who you're created to be. When you said that he ran over to hug that doctor, the first thought was you were freed from that anger. You were freed from it. Did you feel that as you were on it, accepting that you weren't, blowing off God, you weren't disappointing him by taking it, you weren't repeating anything, you were helping yourself, you were helping your family. As you became regulated to this new life, the life you were intended to live, right? Did you find that the anger started going away? Did it start to fade away for you?
It started to diminish. I don't want anybody to feel like, I started taking medication and then, 2 months later I was healed, because that's not my story. I think other people may have had things like that, but my story is not that. I did feel so much more joy.
Sure.
And I remember saying the words, is this what everybody else feels like all the time? Because it was like I didn't have the weight on me. That's what the biggest difference. I didn't have that pressure all the time. And I asked Andy and another friend, I was like, is this what y'all feel like all the time? And they said, this is the joy. This is God's joy that he is able to put in you. And so the anger, I think the seeds are still there until they're dealt with.
That's good.
And so I don't want anybody to feel like they just disappear, which would be awesome. And I'm not saying God can't heal that. I absolutely believe he can. But there's sometimes it just takes, everybody says peeling the onion. I got to tell you, I hate that phrase. I hate it. Because I don't want to peel the onion. I want to boil the onion and smash it. So then it's done. But that's not how things work. I understand. But it is like that. It's if I did take the whole onion all at once, I might not be able to stand it or withstand it.
Wow. Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah. So that's why I think it's the anger. I still have a little anger in there, It's nothing like it was years ago. But it's so funny. I'm a grown woman, and I still think, I sure wished I had had a mom and dad. And so every now and then you still think that, but I always go back to, I would never wish that on another little girl, ever. I am privileged that God gave me the strength to go through that and was with me and knew I could handle it. That's a privilege.
Right.
And I have the most amazing, how he says he will give back to you what the locusts have stolen.
Yes. Beautiful scripture.
I posted just about this the other day. As a little girl, I always wanted to be a mom. Always. I had any baby doll I could get my hands on. I had 2 of some of the same kinds. My grandmother was just my person. And so she would always bring me those. But I was always terrified that I would be like my mom. So it was just such a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And I would always pretend. Anytime I pretended or played house, that's what it was. I was the mom, and I was married to this handsome, very strong, protective man. And the real thing is just, it makes my dream almost comical compared to what I have in real life and the way God has restored. All of that. My husband is the most godly man I've ever met. Before we got married, we went through this whole thing that I didn't think I was worthy of him, because I literally thought he might be the second coming. Because I wasn't used to that type of behavior from a man. Sure. He was so godly and respectful. And I just thought, okay, something is wrong with you. Or you're Jesus. It was just something I really had to work through. And of course, they fall off the pedestal, and we get, we're all back in the real world. But he still is the most amazing godly man I've ever met. And having 4 healthy young men that all have relationships with God, just, I'm almost speechless.
Yes.
At what I have been blessed with. So there are those little, seeds of anger, I think sometimes are still there, or the enemy pokes more than anything, just pokes at them. And I just think, it sure would have been nice for my kids to have grandparents, or I wish I'd had a dad, or, whatever. But I have to just be, oh my goodness, what I have is just, again, the greatest gift. I talked to one of the first counselors I ever went to, told me that when they heard my full story, that she said, Charisse, with your story, statistically, one of 3 things will happen. You're either a sex worker, you're strung out on drugs, or a sex worker as well as strung out on drugs, or you're usually dead by now. That's what she told me statistically. And God said, I have something better for you. That's not going to happen.
Right.
It's not going to be easy. We're going to work through it together. But I feel like my life now is a miracle compared to what it, quote unquote, should have been statistically.
Right. Well, and you can see the hand of God painting through your life, you can see that. I can see that just from what you're saying, that no, he's not sitting up there saying, okay, well, I plan all this destruction and Charisse
Right.
is but his hand was there upon you, directing you, protecting you, knowing that he had equipped you to press through, and not just press through to be able to cope, but to press through to be able to have victory. That which had been passed down, so to say, to you, you would not pay that forward to the next generation, but you would take a turn on that. He could see all that, knew all that. That's amazing. That's our God that lives outside of time, looking into time,
Yes.
and then correlating and magically moving throughout time to make good out of all things for those that love him, And so hearing your story about how God navigated you through the yuck, through the bad, bringing you into, even though you were trying to be June Cleaver, that's a miracle in and of itself, isn't it? Because that's like the exact opposite of what you said the statistics said about a person going through what you went through, right?
I think that's the stubbornness. I always say that's one of my greatest strengths is I am so stubborn. And I really do think my husband and my kids may not agree, but I think it is my greatest strength because, when somebody says this is what it's going to be and I don't want it to be, then it is not going to be. And, I ran away from home when I was 17, and getting to the point where I even met Andy, to me, is miraculous. I mean, what teenage runaway meets a godly man who puts the Lord first from the time he's 7. And at that time, he worked 2 jobs, was going to school full time, and had a 4.0, and he was also a bodybuilder. That did not go against him at all. That was a good thing.
That helps, right?
That helped. But just having God put him in my life, was a miracle, because that's not what happens with teenage runaways. No,
but teenage runaways who are under the hand of the master, I often said that, for over myself, that God kept his hand as I was running, like we do with like little children, you keep your hand on them. And then when I finally surrendered, he said, finally, can I have a cup of coffee?
Yes.
So I can see how you were being that stubbornness is a gift that has been, when it's channeled in the right direction, it's
there you go.
Right? It's leadership when it's channeled in the right way. Mm-hmm. But it had you in survivor mode, surviving. I gotta survive, which is a good thing. And then God just set everything up like dominoes for you. And so here you are today. Not living maybe as June Cleaver, but I'm telling you, the happiness that they tried to portray in that little show, you're living it. You're living it. And it's not something that you're fake until you make it. It's really your reality of that joy, that beautiful marriage, your children, your family. How incredible is that? I mean, that's beautiful. Talk about lemons being made into lemonade. I mean, it doesn't get much better.
That's one thing I have a really hard time with words to describe it, because I can't. I don't have the capacity to understand the blessings that have come through my husband and our 4 sons.
Yeah.
But it also makes me wonder, what is God doing that he's going to do through our 4 sons?
Right.
That's cool to me, because my husband has his own story that, he wasn't even supposed to be here. And he's an only child, and he wasn't even supposed to be born. And so I'm just like, God, I cannot wait to see what's happening, because you've got some stuff in store. And, being able to use his power to break that cycle. And I want people to know too, it's not just a chosen few. It is all of us. He loves all of us. And I always think, how we have a favorite thing. We have a favorite book, or we have a favorite chair, or we have a favorite drink. We have a favorite thing that we love more than anything.
So true.
Imagine God looking at you like that. You are his absolute favorite thing on this whole planet. But now understand that he looks like that at you, and has the ability to do that with everyone else on this planet that we don't have the capacity to understand. But that's how our God is. He looks at you as his absolute favorite, and every other person too. Isn't that amazing?
It is. It's so amazing. And again, how he weaves us all together, because now this story that you're sharing in part about your life is now in a book.
I know.
And isn't that amazing? And so now people all over the world are reading your story and you know that God is speaking to them through that chapter, through the words on those pages. How did you come to the place where you were like, okay, yeah, I'm going to write about it. Okay, yeah, okay, I'm going to be in this anthology. I'm going to step out and walk on the water here. I'm going to put this down on paper. I'm going to put it in a book and I'm going to share it with the world. How did that happen?
Well, I've always wanted to write. I remember when I was little, I would actually write songs. I don't know why, but I would just write songs as a little girl. I've always wanted to write a book. So that's always kind of been on my bucket list, so to speak. And then when this anthology came, and actually I've written several beginning points of books. So I've got chapters floating around in different parts of my computer things. But when this opportunity came up, I thought, okay, this is perfect. This is an awesome way for me to experience just a little bit of it. Just to even write one chapter, it's a great experience to start and get my toe in the water. But then when it came down to what to write, that's where I really was praying so much about it, because I knew God, I still know, I know there's more that he wants me to write. Absolutely. I hear that all the time from him. But I wondered how much of what I went through should I share? How deep, there was so much that I had to pray about. And it really was more like, I got it, just here, just do this. That's really what it felt like as I was writing. I wrote that chapter in about 2 sittings because it was just him saying, this is how it's going to go. And that was so easy for me. That was so much easier for me than trying to orchestrate it myself and figure out the best thing and what do they need to hear. It was just like, God, what do you want me to say?
Yes.
Because it is more about, yes, I absolutely believe that we have to share our testimony. It talks about that in Revelation, how we're saved by the blood of the Lamb and the words of our testimony. And I had to come to terms with that because I never used to talk about it. That was part of that fear and the mask. And nobody's ever going to hear anything. People didn't know I had any brothers and sisters for the longest time. Because, not that I was embarrassed. I just never talked about our family because we grew up so differently. I'm the third of 4 siblings. And after, I think, 4th grade, I never lived in the same house with them again. So it was just all different. Yeah. So I just never talked about it. But God told me at one point, it's not your story you're not sharing. It's mine. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, I'm so sorry. That was huge.
Wow.
Huge for me. And so that's why it's become so much easier for me to be more open about it, because he's right. It's not any of this that I did in my own power. And it's not any of this that I did because I was more special than someone else. It is what God is doing through me that on occasion I have let my stubbornness down a little bit so that he can get through. But it is all about his story. Yes. That's what it boils down to.
Oh, that is so amazing. I love that. It's about his story, not my own story. And that puts it into perspective right there. It's not about me.
Right.
It's about what he has done through us, isn't it? And sharing your story and your voice with the world to help somebody else and to give them strength and hope and education and to let them know they're not alone.
Exactly.
Man, and that what God did for you, he'll do for them, Mm-hmm. It's not a respecter of people. He's a respecter of faith, and faith meaning faith in him, faith that he can do it.
Exactly.
This is such a powerful testimony. So you hook up with the anthology, you jump in, and off you go and running. Now, you had said that Jody, one of the other authors, in this anthology. You connected with her, and that's how you got to the anthology. So connect the dots with us quickly. I'm so curious.
Jody and I have known each other, I want to say 5 years, maybe 6 years now.
Okay.
It all mixes up to me. I'm not very good with dates and things, but we've known each other for a while. Before I transitioned, we actually knew each other from the previous business that we were both in.
Okay.
Years ago. And so we had connected, and we always say we are two sides of the same coin. We run a mastermind together, and we are almost always thinking the same thing. It is almost a joke. Anybody who is in any of our programs know it's just hilarious because we'll be talking or saying or thinking the same thing. And it happens all the time. And so we just really have a strong mutual respect for each other. And I adore her. I think she has a brilliant business. The way she is, all of her mental wellness, everything is just powerful. And if you ever have been in a time where you've listened to her talk for an extended period of time, she's just so soothing and calm.
Yes,
She just fits that, where I'm the one who's more kind of excited and out there. So we just fit each other so well. And she's just a blessing. And so she told me about the book that she did before, Pain to Purpose.
Yep.
And so when this one came up, she said that she thought of me immediately, and I jumped on board, didn't even think twice about it. Knew I wanted to be a part of it. She had talked about you and Deborah, Apostle Deborah, and before, and how wonderful. So I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm all in.
I love it. That is great. So one more question for you. What has been your favorite part of being in this anthology? If there was something that you could put your thumbprint on and say that was the best, what would it be?
Okay. I don't know if I can say one, because there's two things that really have stuck out to me.
Okay.
One is that working and meeting these women, and I know probably everybody says that, but it is so amazing. These 30 plus other authors in other countries, and meeting all these women and hearing everything that they have overcome and everything that the Lord has done through each one of them, and them coming together in this one book. To me, that is the coolest, most amazing, only can be done by God kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Just wow. I mean, I love that so much, and getting to know each one of them. It's just been so amazing. And I haven't gotten to do that with everybody, but just being in some of the meetings together and hearing what everybody says and how it's just, that has been awesome. The experience itself, y'all made it so simple. Y'all made it like, I almost feel guilty saying I wrote a book, because I really didn't do anything. It kind of feels like, because y'all just made it like, here it is, fill in the blanks and you're done. I mean, that's really what it felt like. And so that, and being in the energetic space with you and Apostle Deborah is just incredible. I mean, the way that you allow God's presence to be with you, in you, and shine through you is just not very common anymore, it feels like. And that is amazing. Those are the things right there that I have loved more than anything else. Yes, I loved having my name in print. Yes, I love being able to say I'm an international best-selling author, which is so cool. Yes. Love all that. But above everything else, it's those things. It's being with all and meeting all these other women. I have connections all over the world now of women I can get to know even better. And then the energetic space, being in that space with the two of you, and honestly watching the Holy Spirit just fly all over the place, and y'all just all of that excitement is so amazing. That has blessed me more than you know.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I'll pay you later.
Okay.
No, it's wonderful to hear what somebody sees as their high point in coming into an anthology like that, and what they're going to remember and take away. And I totally come back with you and say the women have been amazing, and their stories are amazing, and the camaraderie and no competition and
None.
like, let me help you,
Yes.
like, let me boost you and you boost. I mean, it's been amazing. And yes, Apostle, I say that she is the pepper to my salt, and like, we just love each other so much. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much, Charisse. And please, before we wrap up now, how do people reach out to you, purchase the book from you, and keep in contact with you?
Well, I have a website. It is www.charisseburton.com. And just so that people know how to spell my name, it is, well, it probably should be on the screen, maybe.
It is in the description.
Perfect. So charisseburton.com, and there is a page there that you can purchase the book, and you can reach out to me there, as well as my website, which is cb.chosen@gmail.com. So I would love to hear from anybody. If you have any questions, or if there's anything that you just want to talk about, that anything you heard here resonates with you, or you have questions about, or you have struggles with, reach out to me. We can talk.
Sounds like Charisse would be your girl. She would be the one to connect to. And what I take away from this whole time we've been together is this: in that mess, God will create the masterpiece.
Oh,
yes. He will give you the tools for your toolbox, not just for you to be able to cope and just navigate, but to actually build the life of your dreams, to leave all of that stuff behind.
Yes. And not pay it forward.
And not pay it forward. Like the woman at the well, she came as, well, the woman that she had been known to be, hiding and all that shame and all of that. But when she left from the presence of the Lord that day, it says she went back and told the whole town, and the whole town was changed for the sake of God. They all came to know who their Savior was because of that woman. She came to the well ashamed, and she left empowered, and it changed not just her life, but the whole town. She really was the first evangelist. Woo, woo, woo.
That's awesome.
That's the truth. And so I hear your story, and that's what it reminds me of, Charisse, is how things might look a certain way, but in the master's hand, it can all be transformed gloriously when we come to the end of ourselves and are willing to say, I surrender, and let him do the magic from there, right? It's so cool. And so to all of you that have been here and you've been listening or watching, would you do Charisse and I a favor? I believe that this story should be viral. I believe it should go all over the world, because there's people that need to hear it.
Yes.
And you can help us do that. Charisse and I can't do that on our own, but if we all reach one, if we all like it and share it, as Les Brown, my mentor, says to do, like it and share it. If you'll do that, just send it to somebody in an email or anything. We can take this story and change lives all over the world, and really continue to push forward the transformation stories of women of power ignited to serve. This is not just another book. It is a movement, and it is a movement of power and a movement of transformation. And so if you would help us do that with Charisse's story, we would be so grateful for that. So I want to thank you to everybody that's been tuning in, and thank you so much, Charisse. It has been a privilege and a joy. I feel so empowered just being in your presence.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I have had a blast. It is so fun to talk about what God's done. I love that. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's been amazing, and I'm sure we will get a chance to do it again. Absolutely. Remember, everybody, you are here on purpose, with a purpose by design, not by default. So go out there and be the salt and the light. everywhere you go.